Shall we go ahead and get into the news? That's like the point of the podcast, right? I mean, I could sit here and tell you guys stories endlessly, but eventually people want to hear about the news, especially our top story that got recommended by a lot of our listeners. The whole, I'm going to say debacle, but we'll explain why I consider it that way. The debacle that is the Sony PS3, PSP, and PS Vita store shutdown. So, people are probably also going to be a little shocked by this. Let me explain it. I think it was last month, Sony came out with a statement basically saying that they were going to be officially shutting down their PS3 store, their PSP store, and their PS Vita store. And they gave a date, I believe it was the beginning of July. July 4th, actually, yeah. They said they will be closed. No, July 2nd, sorry. It was a birthday for my sister-in-law. And you have this long to get whatever games you want on it. And they even put things on clearance prices to be able to help you get it a little bit quicker. And after that, it was going to be shut down. Well, basically the next month, Sony went into a bit of fan backlash because a lot of fans lashed out at them and said, no, you know, why aren't you incorporating this into the PS4 store? Why are you just getting rid of it? You know, you're just going to encourage nothing more than emulation, et cetera, like lots of reasons. And I saw actually a few videos going out about it, just saying how it's going to be bad for Sony. I can't remember. Alex, did we talk about it on a stream?
Briefly, I know we did, but we didn't get too much into it, I recall.
Yeah, because at that point it was shut down. But last week, they came out with a full statement basically stating that because of the fan backlash, they didn't realize how important that store was and have decided to not close the PS3, PSP, and PS Vita stores after all. Now, granted, they did shut down the website, so you couldn't access them via PC, and they haven't said when that's going to be coming back up. But you are going to be able to still use the PS3 store. And here's actually what the official statement that they made. And this is from Jim Ryan, president and CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment. When we initially came to the decision to end purchasing support for PS3 and Vita, it was born out of a number of factors, including commerce support challenges for older devices and the ability for us to focus more of our resources on newer devices where a majority of our games are playing on. We see now that many of you are incredibly passionate about being able to continue purchasing classic games on PS3 and Vita for the foreseeable future. So I'm glad we were able to find a solution to continue operations. And so at that point, now, granted, after this whole thing has happened, there's been a number of other theories that have been brought up as to what the heck is going on with it. But I just kind of want to dissect initially what you guys think this is. Is this just a Sony F up, for lack of a better term?
Honestly, I wouldn't necessarily say an F up. I mean, we've been seeing over the past while that Sony has been trying to push more and more people towards PS4 and PS5, towards all of the newer stuff, and not really offering any way for people to play a lot of these classic games. I mean, they may say, oh, but we had the PlayStation Classic. Yeah, for the small plug-and-play console that had PAL versions of all your games that nobody bought, and it's literally has been marked down to $20 at last I checked. And so it's one of those cases where I'm of two minds. It's either one of two things. Either Sony realized, oh, hey, we can probably still milk out a bunch of money out of this,
Mm-hmm.
or alternately, they probably saw a bunch of people panic buying, thinking, okay, well, we can still milk some money out of this. Or they're trying the Beanie Baby tactic of trying to create that artificial scarcity in order to incentivize that panic buying, make them think, oh, we're going to cancel it. Oh, wait, people actually like this. I guess we'll keep it open because we saw how much money we're making.
That's technically one of the theories that is out there, is that they basically tried to create this artificial scarcity to be able to test whether or not this market is still there and able to produce money. And also the other part of that theory is basically they just wanted to have a surge in sales right before they closed it. So that overall it was worth it.
Yeah, because I mean, I fell for it. I know that because I panic bought a whole bunch of titles when I saw the news because I thought,
you're not the only one. Me and Andrea immediately, like, we hadn't purchased anything yet, but we were like, okay, on this day, we're going to go look through the store and see what we still want to get. And basically, we limited ourselves to, like, if it was PS3, then it would go onto our PS3. Or if it was PS2, it would go there. But if it was PS1 or PSP, then we would move it over to, like, our PlayStation TV. And that would be where it's played.
Yeah, and so it's probably a mixture of things. Another factor to this that may have caused them to change their mind is that there's actually still a number of indie developers that develop titles for the Vita.
Yeah.
And when a lot of them started saying, hey, this is literally
and we're talking specifically for the Vita, like with its hardware in mind.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure when a lot of those developers started coming out of the woodwork saying, hey, we have stuff we're developing for this console. If you close down the store, we literally cannot make any money.
Yeah.
And Sony probably were trying to curry favor with indie developers as best as they can, probably think, okay, well, this, at least if we can't use the influx of people buying stuff on the PlayStation 3 store, we can probably use these developers as some sort of, I guess, some sort of excuse, for lack of a better term. Honestly, I think it's one of those cases, to be a bit more optimistic, it's probably one of those cases where Sony kind of got a little short-sighted, thinking, oh, well, we need to start pushing things towards PS5, and it's clear backwards compatibility, despite, Microsoft beating them on many fronts in regards to backwards compatibility. It's is not as much of a priority for Sony as it frankly should be. It's a bit of a mess. Yeah. I'm a bit miffed because I fell for it, and I'm sure a lot of people fell for it, but it's very much one of those, best case scenario, Sony was convinced by the backlash and the surge in sales, but more than likely, they probably saw this coming and probably figured, okay, let's see how much money we're going to get by creating this, looming, by putting this sort of Damocles hanging over the PlayStation 3 store. Okay, we're making a lot of money. There's clearly still a market here for a lot of these classic titles. Okay, we'll pull the sword back for now and wait until we can do this again when we need another quick cash injection.
Yeah, pretty much. The other thing that actually really irritated me on this particular issue was the fact that you actually saw videos. I tried to track one of them down and I couldn't find the exact one, but basically it was an industry insider who was basically saying, here's how, this doesn't have to be a separate thing. Here's how we can find a way to be able to incorporate the PS3 store into your current infrastructure. So at that point, it still remotely works with PS4 store / PS5 store, but maybe the only avenue that you could access it would be through the website until they could figure out how to make the PS3 work for there. And so I saw a few videos basically going, here's how you can incorporate it into your infrastructure, and then it doesn't matter. Because I kind of agree with them. The main reason that Sony is concerned about this is that they see servers being devoted to this store that maybe don't see a whole lot of action these days. And so at that point, they need to find a way to justify keeping those servers open. And that's the difficulty. And I understand that wholeheartedly, but at the same time, if it's that easy to be able to incorporate it into your PS4 store, why haven't you done it, Sony? Because then at that point, you don't have to worry about those servers. You can shut them down and use the existing ones.
Well, the short answer is they're trying to push more and more people to sign up for PlayStation Now, which is basically, oh, hey, you want to play these classic titles?
That's another aspect of this, too.
Yeah, which... like many people, I'm not sold on it. The whole, streaming games instead of, having it downloaded on your console or having a physical copy. It's like, oh yeah, that's only...
Well, and another thing that doesn't help that argument is, so we have used PlayStation Now, but strictly because of streaming kind of thing, because it's a little bit more of a headache to get the PS3 going. And there's also just a tad bit of delay, which can screw up a stream kind of thing. And the other thing that people aren't willing enough to admit there is, yes, it plays PS3 games. PS1 games, not really there. And I think that I've seen maybe one or two, and they don't work very well. So at that point, so you already have that market who wants to be able to play their classic PS1 games that don't see it as viable. They're not interested in having PlayStation Now because it doesn't have what they want. And so at that point, what are they looking at? They're looking at emulation. They're looking at other ways to be able to keep their games. Alex, what is your take on the whole situation with the PS3 store?
I was a little surprised at first, and I didn't look too much into it beyond that. I haven't really booted up my PS3 in quite a while, so. But I think it's probably a good idea. If people really wanted it back, then I'm glad Sony's relenting on it and gonna keep it open then.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is eventually they're going to have to shut it down. And at some point they're gonna have to, in my opinion, they're gonna have to find a way to be able to bridge that gap. And something tells me that they just don't want to do it right now because it's probably too costly. But eventually they are gonna, like, the reality here is they're gonna have to shut that store down. So eventually, I mean, this just buys you a little bit more time. I mean, already the other thing that I was thinking of as soon as this happened was, okay, so when is Nintendo going to shut down the Wii shop or the Wii U eShop? Because that should be going down at some point.
Yeah, it's just the difference is that at least with Nintendo, they at least give like kind of. They don't do what Sony did, where they make the announcement of, oh, it's going to shut down within the year. They usually give like when they were shutting down the Wii shop, they at least gave at least a year and a half's worth of notice, saying, hey,
yeah.
And that was at least like well into the Wii U and subsequently the Switch's lifespan. It's like, okay, well, we're a couple of consoles down the road. We can shut this one down because we're a couple of consoles down the road, and most of the stuff that's on the Wii shop you can get through the Wii U.
Yeah.
And so that we'll probably see a similar pattern with Nintendo, where if and when we see another space shuttle that gets put out, they'll probably be like, okay, well, we're another couple of consoles down the road. We'll shut down the Wii shop, the Wii U shop, and by then Nintendo will probably have found a way to funnel a lot of that library to the newer stores, so that way they can allow. Because I mean, that's kind of the way to do it. And with Sony, I mean, I get it. Sony lost a lot of money with the original launch of the PS3, where they tried to have it backwards compatible for 2 and 1.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. They lost money. It had hardware issues, but there are probably better ways to go about it. I mean, if I were someone at Sony, I'd be like, okay, well, if you don't want to keep these stores open and you don't want to run the risk of like piracy or emulation, why not create some sort of an add-on that's like an optional disc drive of, okay, you have a PS4, here's an optical disc drive you can connect to your PS4 that basically has the PS3 hardware, so that way you can put your PS3 games in it. Subsequently have it be like, okay, you have like this attachable USB drive that lets you play PS2/PS1 games, since all you would need to do is create the hardware that would have the PS2's emotion engine to be able to play PS2 and PS1.
That's one of those peripherals that people would buy. I mean, for as much as people complain about like things like the Sega CD to prolong a lifespan of a given console, which believe it or not is an argument that is made with people who want like separate optical drives to be able to attach, and they would be able to play the PS2 games, and that would fix your problem. It actually does make a lot more sense. And I mean, look at the Super Game Boy, for example. That thing sold like hotcakes when it was available. And now, I don't know if you guys have gone to an eBay auction recently for one of those. They're absurd prices because people want to get their hands on a Super Game Boy. And it gets even higher when you're talking about the GameCube add-on that was like that, but with Game Boy Advance. All right? So a lot of people like those add-ons, and I 100% disagree with what people think is the market's demand here. I think if Sony made exactly what Rodney is saying, and say, let's just say for the sake, because it's just the drive, right? It's not necessarily a PS2 within itself. It would be using the PS4's existing hardware to do it. Let's say that you could sell it for $100, maybe.
Yeah,
$100, and people would pay it. That's the thing. People would pay for it because that gives them, like, Alex, would you pay for that?
Yes, I would.
Because you want to play your PS2 games. You want to play your PS1 games. And this would give you the avenue to do it.
Yeah. I mean, another alternate example, I mean, for example, like when you look at the way both PlayStation 2 discs and PlayStation 3 discs work, PlayStation 2 discs are basically DVD discs. So you would just have to create a DVD drive, not necessarily a Blu-ray drive. For PS3, Sony could probably just take a page from what Microsoft does, where they basically find a way to create the software infrastructure. Because with Microsoft, for their Xbox One and even the Xbox 360, they basically had it where, like, okay, we're sending these patches to our consoles that can update which of these older games they're actually able to read and run in these systems architecture. And so I look at this, which is like, okay, Sony, rather than trying to do the hardware route, do the software route, send out a firmware update that allows people to put in their PS3 games, so that way you don't even have to sell a peripheral for it. I get it. The Emotion Engine had a lot of, unique idiosyncrasies that makes that difficult, but we're at the point where there is a workaround, and we know Sony is capable of these workarounds because there are PS2 games you can buy and play on PlayStation 4.
Yeah, there are. And the other thing too, this is why I'm kind of going the optical drive route, like a separate drive, because I've seen a lot of the drives that you can get now, just like open up on the market. They run a lot of the different disc formats that existed throughout the years. So at that point, they could run PS1, they could run PS2, they could run original Xbox, they could run Wii, for crying out loud. And because the tech is really easy to make, it's kind of cheap right now. And I'm going the business response, which is you want to make more money, right? You don't want to just toss out a firmware update and then, everybody just expects that's free. You want to make money? Okay, do this. Guarantee you people will pay for it.
Yeah.
They'll pay for it in droves.
Yeah, if they're not willing to pay Sony, well, then give Retron some time, because Retron has been having a lot of success with their brand of retro consoles. I mean, I've got a Retron 5 here that I've been getting a lot of use out of for a lot of my Game Boy, NES, SNES, and Genesis games. And so, if you don't do it, I'm pretty sure a company like Retron is gonna find a way to do it.
Or RetroArch. A lot of people don't like and here's the thing. I get a lot of crap for my viewpoint on a certain type of person that sails on the seven seas. I've got to change that opinion, especially in light of the PS3 store. Is if you're not going to make this stuff available, can you really blame people for pirating it? Can you? Because all you're doing is you're sending them right into the emulation's hands, kind of thing. I mean, this is why I've got a Raspberry Pi with RetroArch, so that I can actually play those games, because some of them aren't available anymore. And there's no way Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, Sega, any of them are going to make those available. So,
and alternately, and not even just with like computer emulation, I mean, when you've got stuff like free MC boot that you can put on a PS2 that allows you to basically soft mod and break the region lock, that allows you to basically play pirated versions of games that Sony doesn't otherwise make available, like Haunting Ground or Rule of Rose. It's a case of people are going to find a way. And so if you want to keep the money coming in, well, you got to actually, meet that demand. Otherwise, people are going to go elsewhere. And that means that
Sony, do you want them paying Retron, or do you want them paying you? Because you could make that happen.
Indeed.
I even personally think, in light of this stuff, and some people are going to scream at me, re-release the PlayStation TV. I know that some people are be like, nah, don't do that. No, hear me out, okay? You have a streaming service that nobody's watching, and that you're trying to encourage people to go watch. And not only that, there's a bunch of other streaming services that are not compatible with your current consoles, and can still technically run on the older consoles. Basically, make that a Roku, which is what it should have been in the first place, except now it can also run all of those PS3 store games. There you go. Maybe even add in a bigger SD card so that people can have bigger storage for it.
Yeah. Alternately, even just update the model. Instead of having it be a miniature Vita, be like, okay, well, here's a slightly beefier PlayStation TV that can play PlayStation 3 games on our service. I mean,
make it slightly beefier, maybe even with a built... Would it kill you to put in a built-in hard drive? Like, guys. Okay, so this is the PlayStation TV, everybody. Look how small that is. Okay? I've seen hard drives that are smaller than this. And they have 1 terabyte on them. You can put a hard drive in this thing. You could. Absolutely you could. And so at that point, and people will pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, if the NVIDIA Shield can run Metal Gear Solid, Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, it's doable. Yeah, it is completely doable.
It's totally doable. And right now, you could complain about the pirating community, but they're finding a way to do it. Which, at that point, doesn't make them pirates. It makes them entrepreneurs. Because if they can do that with your tech, just imagine if they actually went into their own, went out on their own.
And by that we mean the ones that, that we mean the ones that actually are smart enough to do it, and not, Soldier Boy.
I'm not encouraging illegal activity or anything like that, but what I'm saying is that they had the drive to reverse engineer it and make it work. What makes you think that they couldn't immediately make something from the ground up that already has all that considered? That's a market that's not tapped at that point. But final thoughts on this one, because we actually do have a couple of other stories that we need to get to. My thoughts are, I do feel like Sony, because I can't help but wonder if this is basically just a glorified test to see if people would go back to the PS3 store and spend money there. Obviously, it worked. So I'm a little irritated about it, but at the same time, I'm also glad that it's not shutting down, which buys people time. But I will also warn people in advance. If you haven't bought something on that PlayStation store that you've considered, like you don't already own it, and you don't own, like, let's just say, like, there's a PS2 game that you were never able to find, and you have a PS2, so you have the PS2, but you can't find the disc, and you found it on the PlayStation store for $4, I'd consider getting it. So at that point, you have it, and you could try it out, because they could change their minds easily 1 year later and say, nope, we're not allowing this anymore.
Yeah, I'll pretty much throw it out here right now. If anybody listening to this is a fan of the Persona series, now is the time to buy the Persona games that are only available on the PS3 store.
That's definitely
not
one
just...
I considered, yeah. And is Persona 2 even on there?
It is, but it's only playable on the PSP and Vita, because you have the Persona 1 remake, you have the Persona 2 remake, and then you have the other Persona 2 that came out on the PlayStation. Yes, there are technically 2 Persona 2s. It is very confusing because Shin Megami Tensei. But yeah, so if you want the Persona games, if you want the Digital Devil Saga games, if you want the Raito Kuzunoha games, you can. If this is any indication of which ones I went and panic bought, well, there's a somewhat complete list. Yep. So yeah, if you're a Persona fan, now's the time to buy those games, because the only ones that have been available anywhere else are literally Persona 4 and Persona 5. If you want to get the others in the series, get it now while you can. Same case with the Metal Gear games.
All right. And Alex, final thoughts on this one?
Nothing more from me, really.
Except that now you're going to go rush out and get all the games that you haven't got yet.
Probably.
Yeah.